Hello my dears, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be having a conversation about women and whether or not women can truly have it all. So this video was inspired by some of the things that I've seen online in terms of mothers being a bit more honest about the struggles that they've had with balancing motherhood and their careers. And so I thought it'd be quite interesting for us to have a conversation about what it can look like for some women who try and pursue having a career as well as having a family. So it's really interesting to me how the ideal of what it is to be the ultimate success has changed so much over the years. Nowadays, it seems very clear that a woman who is truly successful in the eyes of our current Western culture is a woman who has managed to both achieve a good career as well as a good family life and have children. And the reason why I say this is because I notice a lot online that if a woman has chosen to just be a housewife, she's just chosen to be married with kids and she's not decided to pursue a career, then people will accuse her of like setting feminism back like a trillion years or something like that. But then I've also noticed that similar shaming happens in reverse. So the women who've chosen to pursue careers and have chosen to prioritize that, such as women like Oprah, Cher, we can see interviews of them being asked these questions about family and them expressing how they never really desire to get married or have children. And it's quite interesting because in the same way that the women who choose to be stay-at-home housewives and choose to, raise their kids and choose family life, they'll be criticized for not having a career. But then the women who choose to pursue a career and become super successful can't avoid being asked questions about family and children and marriage. So it's quite clear that our society believes that a woman, to be truly successful, she really should have both of these things. She should be a successful wife and mother, and she should also have a good career. And so I've been trying to figure out where this ideal has come from, because it's not an ideal that we've held for a very long time. In fact, it's actually relatively new. And so I'm going to give my theory as to where I think it stems from. So during the Victorian era, the pinnacle of a woman's success was determined by her ability to get married and have children. So if a woman was still unmarried by, say, the time she was 26 years old, then she would be regarded as a spinster. Spinsters were regarded as caste, as being a spinster was regarded as the ultimate failure during this time. Marriage was seen as a natural purpose of a woman's life because her journey was supposed to consist of her finding someone to marry her and take care of her. This is because during this time, women working was frowned upon. Women did work, mainly working class women worked. This is often why you'll hear people say that the feminist movement was an middle class woman's struggle or a middle class white woman's struggle. And where this stems from is from the fact that the reality is women have always worked. Working class women have always worked, even before the feminist movement. It was the middle class and upper class women who were unable to work, because if she was to go out to work, then it communicated to the rest of the community that her husband was not able to afford to take care of her. And so this is what a lot of the feminist movement was trying to combat and fight against, because they wanted the ability to freely work without the judgment, the social stigma, and the potential collapse of their status in society. So now we're going to get into feminism. I have a suspicion that the reason why the new ideal that we have today looks the way that it does is because of the Victorian era's ideal clashing with the feminists' ideal. And those two things have created some kind of weird third entity that we see today. And I'll explain to you why. So feminists believe that we live in a patriarchal society, which is the idea that men hold the power position within society and they use this power to oppress and keep women inferior. Radical feminists believe that family is a key part in upholding this patriarchal system. And so naturally, of course, they do have issues with the nuclear family. Radical feminist Germaine Greer wrote the book The Whole Women, and within it she argued that family continues to disadvantage women, and she focused on women's roles as wives, mothers, and daughters. Within her book, Germaine argued that society places too high of an importance on wives and the idea that women should marry. She argues that women are usually basically expected to be cheerleaders of their husbands without any personal identity of their own, while he does not have to reciprocate the same favor because he has done all that he needs to by simply agreeing to marry her. She also argued that society does not appreciate motherhood, as mothers are expected to give up everything from their careers to their bodies in order to give birth to their children without receiving very much in return. She says that mothers are undervalued within society and that motherhood is not a good career option and that women should not dedicate their lives to being wives and mothers, and she in fact finds the word motherly to be quite frumpish and suffocating. While Greer does not necessarily believe that women should completely isolate themselves from men, she does believe believe that women are much better suited to live in merry local households, which is basically a household where it's just only women inside of it. But she does believe that it should be multi-generational so that they could all pass wisdom on to each other. Germaine Greer has been criticized on her book, mainly for the fact that she does make generalizations and sweeping statements without providing enough evidence to back them up. Other feminists have also criticized Greer for the fact that she doesn't take into account the progressions that women have made within their family life over the years. Greer's views definitely help us to understand the women who have chosen to completely abandon family life altogether and have chosen to prioritize their careers. This might also explain why women feel empowered by the decision to not have kids and to not get married. Because if you have some feminists saying that marriage is essentially a slave contract and that motherhood is not rewarded, then it does make sense as to why there are women who feel a strong sense of pride for going against these social norms and social expectations and choosing to pursue their careers and independence instead. Now, I said earlier that I personally think that the ideal that we have today is a combination of both the Victorian era as well as the views of radical feminism. And so we now have a situation where women are not trying to do one or the other. There are a lot of women who are trying to do both. But the problem is it realistic to do both? Sylvia Ann Hewitt wrote an article for Harvard Business Review, and it was titled Executive Women and the Myth of Having It All. Within the article, she discussed how there's a very painful, well-kept secret among many successful women, and that is that many of them are childless, but it wasn't by choice. One senior manager that Sylvia Ann Hewitt spoke to stated, the typical high-achieving woman in her middle age has not made a choice, but a creeping non-choice. They never intended for their life to not include a family, but they were focused on their career and time passed them by, and by the time they could realize, it was too late to go in the opposite direction. Sadly, women do not have the option to delay their fertility in the same way that men can, because women's window to have a baby naturally is a lot shorter than a man's is. It's quite unfortunate how we don't get taught this stuff, because I only just recently discovered that up to 90% of your eggs are gone by 30. And I think that's information that women should know, because a lot of women don't know that. Your fertility does decline with age and your rates of miscarriage increase with age. So for those who don't know, you're most fertile when you are younger, so when you are in your late teens, early 20s. Your fertility does start to take a very small decline when you reach 25. It's not major, but it does start its decline. And then at 30, again, it takes another gradual decline. And then by 35, it starts to nosedive to the floor. Like, if you look at the graph, it's just like, Do not be duped by all of these celebrities who are having children in their 40s and 50s, etc., because they're usually paying for surrogates. Like, most of them, if you look deeper into their stories, they've had a surrogate carry their child for them, or they've had some other very expensive treatments that the average person cannot afford. So yeah, it is very important for women to know when their fertility window actually is, and I think it's actually really bad that they don't teach us this a lot sooner, because then people could make more calculated decisions. But we are also going to talk about these fertility treatments, because a lot of women are using these as a backup option, and they are relying on them to be the thing that can extend their fertility window. But we have to have an honest discussion about just how reliable these treatments are, as well as how much they cost. So there has been a massive rise in women choosing to freeze their eggs in recent times. A lot of young women are choosing to opt for this option while they pursue their careers, so that they can have this as, as like a backup option, something to kind of prolong their fertility. So we're going to talk specifically on egg freezing. So according to the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority, which is a UK-based organisation who oversee the use of gametes and embryos in fertility treatment and research. So they're the ones that do all the research into all of this stuff, and they're the ones that give all of these clinics their licensing. So on their website, they do state that there is no guarantee of achieving a successful pregnancy and birth with the frozen egg treatment. And they also discuss that currently women using their own frozen eggs in treatment have a success rate of 18%. If you wish to use a frozen egg from a donor, the success rate goes up to 30%. The reason why the success rate is slightly higher with a donor egg is because donor eggs have more strict requirements, so the age of the person, the health of the person, etc. So because of that, they can increase the success rate, because they can be more picky with who they get the egg from, and so they can make sure that it's a better quality egg. But if you're going to be using your own egg, they have no control over what your conditions are going to be. They can't control how old you are, they can't control what your health is. So because of that, it does kind of decrease the general average of what the success will be with the treatment. They also state that it's important that women women know that if they wish to freeze their eggs, they must do so whilst they are still under 35, because this does offer you a slightly higher chance of success. So in order to have your eggs collected, it can cost up to $4,000. The medication is charged separately and can usually cost anywhere from £500 to 1.5k. They also have to pay for storage as well. So these are the fees that you'll pay to keep your eggs in the freezer. And those are currently around £125 per year to £350 per year. So under the UK law, you can only have your eggs frozen for up to 10 years. Now, once you decided you want to use the eggs, the cost of thawing and transferring the eggs into the womb can cost up to 3k. So all in all, the average cost to do this procedure can be up to around £8,000. Now, do bear in mind that that is £8,000 for a procedure that has an 18% success rate. So I did have a look, because my audience is predominantly American and British, so I thought I'd have a look to see how much it costs in the US as well. So from what I could find, in the US, it costs anywhere between $6,000 and $20,000. I don't know if they have a limit on how long you can keep the eggs frozen for. I couldn't find anything on that, so that might just be a UK specific law. Freezing your eggs is something that you have an option to do, but it is very expensive, and the technology as it stands at the moment is not that great. Technology, I'm sure within time will increase and get better, but as it currently stands at the moment, that is what the odds look like if you choose to take this route. Now let's get into the realities of what it can look like to date as well as a career woman, because Sylvia Ann Hewitt did have a look into that. So what she did was she surveyed really successful men, and she also surveyed really successful women, so she could see if there was a difference between the success in dating between successful men and successful women. She spoke to people who were within the top 10% of earners. So what she found was that men don't have to deal as much with the trade-offs that come with having a career and being a father, which makes sense, right? Because men don't carry babies, and so therefore they don't have to take maternity leave, etc. So she found that 79% of the men that she spoke to wanted children, and out of the 79%, 75% already had them. However, she found that 50% of the women that she surveyed were childless. She also found that the high achieving women also struggled more to get married. 83% of the highest achieving men were married, in comparison to 57 to 60% of the women. She attributed this to the differences between men and women when it comes to mate selection. Women typically tend to want to marry or date a man who either earns the same amount as them or more than them, whereas men, on the other hand, don't care. Men don't care how much you earn. She found that 61% of the men who were married to women who didn't have a job, but of the ones who were married to a woman who had a full-time job, the average salary they earned was around $35,000 a year. But in contrast to this, the high-achieving women wanted to date a guy who earned at least $100,000 a year. So the guys are like, hey, you don't even need to have a job and I'll still marry you. But if you want to have a job, that's cool. You can earn 35 grand. Whereas the women are like, give me that 100k. So because of that, men have more options, and so they're more likely to get married and more likely to have families. This is actually kind of partially what inspired this video. I was seeing influencers discuss the struggles that they were having with balancing motherhood and balancing their careers. And so I am going to talk about 2 examples of that within this video, or 3 examples of that within this video. So Patricia Bright is an online British beauty influencer. She has openly spoken out about the struggles of being a mother as well as having a career. Patricia Bright is regularly shamed on Instagram and stuff by women for not being with her kids very often, because she's always traveling and doing loads of work and stuff, and her job requires her to go to like fashion weeks and go to do like interviews and all this kind of stuff. So because of that, she's not as present in her children's lives as people think that she should be. And so there have been people who've criticized her for being a bad mother. Patricia Bright has been quite honest about the realities that she's faced of being a working mother and the type of job that she has. And she has even admitted to missing birthdays. And I respect the fact that she was honest about it, to be honest, because I don't like it when people pretend that this is just a walk in the park and anyone can do it. Like, I think it's good for women to be honest about those things. She has a husband, so obviously he's there with the kids when she's not there. I think as long as a child has a consistent parent, I think that's all that really matters. I don't think it has to be a woman. I think as long as they have a consistent parent who's always there, you know, who's doing all this stuff with them, then I think that is fine. So, and I think that seems to be the situation that Patricia has. I know that her husband does have his own job, but I think he's the more present parent between the two of them. if the kids are happy, I don't really see why it matters to people on Instagram. Hannah Obag is another influencer who I've seen express her struggles that she was having with balancing being a fitness influencer and a business owner, as well as being a new mother.
I just simply want to do this video because this is how it actually can look like when everything is just a little bit too much. Not a little bit, it is too much. It is too much. Working full-time and being a full-time mom is not easy. And I feel like I fail Colin every single day. Being an influencer is not easy. I never have time to rest. I never have the time to just, if I don't take myself that time, I don't have it. And as I said in the beginning, I have really hard talking about Colin. Because sometimes it's really hard to, I'm just trying to, when he's awake, whenever he's awake, I'm trying to have the time that I can with him. But it is really hard when I also have to work. And I get the worst conscience ever. Because I feel like I disappoint him. He doesn't know now, but I don't want to look back at the time with him thinking that, why did I work so much? But at the same time, I love my job.
I also saw another case of a presenter who was kind of going through a similar thing. I can't remember her name now, but if I find the video, I'll put it up, where she was talking about how she wanted to take a back seat from her career because she really just wanted to spend time with her family, and she felt like she wasn't present as much as she wanted to be. And so she was discussing her leaving the network.
I didn't see my parents for a year. And at some point, my husband and I looked at each other and we just thought, what are we doing? We've got to get back home. And an opportunity came up. I'm going home to Ohio. I will be on the air. It will be announced later this week. For any of you who care, I will let you know. I'll put it out on Instagram. But I'll tell you what I told Jeff Zucker when I left, and when I told him that I was leaving back in January. I love these people. I love this place. I am so grateful. And I'm so tired.
I'm not so an easy schedule. It's a grind.
We're up between 1 and 2 every Saturday and Sunday. And I just could not be who I needed to be for my family, is what it really came down to. I was tired of being tired. And I told them, look, let's be honest. The work we do is important. The work you do is important wherever you go. Whatever you do every day, it's important work. But at the end of the day, somebody's going to sit in this seat, and I'm going to leave, and the show will go on as it should. But nobody else is going to be my kid's mom. And nobody else is going to be my husband's wife or my parents' children. And I need to be fully present there. And it's been hard because you know how it is when you're just so exhausted. And after 9 years, that's just what it is. But before I leave, I just want to let you know, I think we all have these very unique roles, you included, that only you can fill. And those are some of my roles.
I do find it fascinating how mum guilt is so prevalent, because I see this all the time. The fact that it's even got its own name, mum guilt, because men do the same thing, right? Like, men go out and they work long hours, and sometimes they won't see their kids for a long time, but they don't seem to experience the same level of guilt. I do personally think that this is largely biological, and the reason I say that is because we see the same type of behavior in other animals. So like when we look at other mammal species, in 95% of mammals, the female is the only caregiver. I think it's only in roughly around like 3 to 5% that they have bi-parent parenting. But in 95% of them, the woman, the female, is the primary caregiver, or is the only caregiver. We are also mammals. Surprise, surprise. Hi. So I do think it is just the case that females have always typically been the caregiver. So we do have those biological instincts to want to take care of our children and to protect them and to nurture them. When we look at other species, we see the exact same behaviors. We see that the female female is the most nurturing and also the most fiercely protective over her babies. She is much more likely to kill in order to protect her children in comparison to the male. Female bears, or mama bears, are much more likely to kill you if you step anywhere near her babies. Father bears, not so much. They're just kind of chilling, they're just vibing. But the mother will kill you. She'll mess you up. Don't touch her babies. And so I do wonder if perhaps mum guilt is the result of what happens when women feel as though they're going against these instincts. I've seen videos of mothers crying their eyes out when they drop their children off at daycare for the first time because they don't want to leave them, but they have no choice. They have to go to work. Especially now in this climate where most women will have to work. They can't afford to not work because they can't afford to live on just one income. So it is putting a lot of women into a lot of situations where they have to work. They don't really have a choice. And so a lot of them feel guilty about the fact that they have to part ways with their children. So in conclusion, I think being a successful career woman is difficult in general. I think being a successful career woman and also having a great balance with your family life is even more difficult. And I think it's important for women to be aware of the realities of what that can look like. If you are someone who is able to have a partner and have a child or children, then you have to decide how you want to navigate that, and you have to accept the reality that you're not going to be able to be perfect at both, because you can't be in two places at the same time. All of our lives will be filled with trades and trade-offs. We have to decide what we want and what we're willing to give up to have that thing. In regards to working mothers, I know this video was very specific to career mothers, but I also just want to talk on working mothers for a second. I personally think that a lot of Western countries don't put in place family-friendly policies, because a lot of working women, if they had the choice, they would spend more time with their children, but they can't because they can't afford to. They have to work and make money in order to survive. But I look at countries like Hungary, and I look at the laws that they have and the policies that they have there, and I think that those are what family-friendly policies actually look like. For example, in Hungary, they had a policy where if a woman has a child, she gets a tax reduction per child, and then once she has 4 children or more, she's completely exempt from tax. And then recently they've just released a new law that says that if a woman becomes a mother within her 20s, then she's completely tax exempt straight away. And they've put these laws in place to tackle the decline in birth rates that they have at the moment, to try and encourage more women to have kids. One of the biggest barriers that stop a lot of women from having kids earlier on is because of finances. So I think that laws like this are good, because if you are reducing the amount of tax a woman pays or making her completely exempt from tax altogether, then not only does it allow her to maintain more of the money that she's earning, but because you're not taxing her into the ground, she can afford to take on less hours, and as a result of that, she'll be able to have more time to spend with her children. But this is also good because it allows women to have more money, but it also does it in a way where she's not dependent on the state. So I think laws like that are a lot more family friendly and a lot more pro-mother. In regards to women who do want to pursue careers though, I guess the biggest advice I would say is find your partner earlier, like while you're still in like your early 20s, and then build your relationship and your career simultaneously. And so that way, say you reach maybe your mid or late 20s and you decide you want to have kids, then you already have the partner part down. You already have that sorted, and you have someone to start that family with, because a lot of the time what happens with these women is that because they're still single, they're focusing so much on career. They're not prioritizing trying to find someone to be in a relationship with. They then start trying to find someone in their 30s, and it becomes a lot harder then to find someone. So I think maybe that's one way you can do it. Another thing I've also seen some women do is that they will get married and have children earlier, and then they'll pursue a career later. And I also see nothing wrong with that too, because you can start a career anytime. Like, there's no limit on when you can start a career. So that's also another option. But yeah, I think ultimately when it comes down to it, I think it's a beautiful thing that women have a choice, whether they want to be a housewife, whether they want to be a working woman, whether they want to be trying to pursue both. I think the only thing that needs to be stressed more is to be more strategic. You don't want to be one of these women who pursued career, knowing that they wanted a family in the back of their heads, but never prioritized any of that. And then by the time they realized, it was too late for them. So you want to always be very calculated in your decision making, be very intentional with your actions. Think about where you want to be in the future. Think about yourself when you're 60, 70. How do you want your life to look? Does it involve grandchildren and children, etc.? Does it involve you being with someone? If it does, then you have to move with intention. You have to date with intention. You have to move accordingly to what you want for yourself in your middle age or your elderly years, because it doesn't make sense to just kind of leave things to the wind, because it might not happen if you don't actively try and make it happen. But that's all I got to say on that. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative. Do let me know down in the comments what you think about this. Maybe you've done this. Maybe you've pursued a career and you have children and you've figured out how to balance it. Please let us know. I'd be very interested to read. If you like this video, then you may as well like and subscribe. I am also on other socials and I make music if you want to check that out. Thank you very, very much for giving me your time today, and I will see you in my next video.